It says under victim. It says victim. So about 4 or 5 pages on the end of the booklet. 4 pages on the end of the booklet. Is that how I'm going to be referencing it?
We started it.
Section 46. Okay, so if you look at the definition of victim there, it says, are we together?
Yes.
All right.
You can read it aloud.
Means any person or persons who individually or collectively have suffered harm, including number 4, including substantial impairment of their fundamental rights through acts or omissions that are in violation of this act or the criminal laws of the country. A generous interpretation of that section means then that anyone in the country who believes that my fundamental rights has been impaired is a victim under this act and needs protection under this act. And if we look at the way our system has tried to squeeze LGBTI people of their fundamental rights, they are actually victims of the state in that setting. But again, the problem is, who is going to do this interpretation? Which judge, which courts? Because those are the tricky aspects. You see elements in the VAP Act that say, oh, it's protective of everyone, it's all inclusive. But by the time you contrast it against the SSNPA, you wonder how that protection will be drawn out. Again, if you look at, I'm sorry, I'm going to be throwing you around a bit. If you look at the VAP Act, section, oh, sorry, it's still section 46, don't go too far. Harmful traditional practices. It defines harmful traditional practices, that's under H now, as all traditional behavior, attitudes, or practices which negatively affect the fundamental rights of women, girls, or any person. And then it goes on with some specific examples. So it says traditional behavior, attitudes, or practices which negatively affect the fundamental rights of, in short, any person. Now again, one of the most basic explanations or justifications for this SSNP has been, this is our culture. In other words, although Professor Odinkalu has abused that notion, and I agree with him totally, but let's even for the sake of argument, agree that yes, this is our culture, our 100 years culture at the very least. By this law, if that culture has a way of impairing on fundamental rights, then that culture is a harmful traditional practice. And I like, because it's very specific, it says traditional behavior, attitudes. That attitude, that's it's not, we never hear, no be attitude, that kind of stuff. It's an attitude. It's illegal. But again, who is going to do that? who is going to call this into question? So even though these things are here now, for me the problem is a matter of enforcement and interpretation under law.
Can I just be the devil's advocate here? I think that the wording of the VAP actually deliberately excludes, and that it is hard to make any interpretation otherwise. Now, if you look at the section under the definition of victim, you will see that it says very deliberately that it only means persons, any person or persons who individually or collectively have suffered harm, including, and then to the last part says, substantial impairment of their fundamental rights through acts or omissions that are in violation of this act, A, and B, or the criminal laws of the country. Right? So what it means is, we have criminal laws that state that this thing, it's not in violation of our criminal laws, and it's, we have legal homophobia, legal, discrimination, it's legal. And so it's not, it actually doesn't, you can make that argument. And of course, we can go back to the Constitution, which is the ground norm, and say, actually, in the Constitution, we can make that argument. I was just making that argument about this particular VAP itself, and that it says, as long as it's fine with our criminal laws, then you are not a victim.
Just to take it a step further, I remember because I was part of the whole women's movement that discussed VAP. And if I can remember, at some point, the discussion with members in the House was that they felt that it was very women-focused. So we now started having discussions about language. And that's why in some places, it almost seems as if the language is no longer focused on just women, but on everything else. So when I was listening to you, I was thinking to myself, those are probably some of the issues we had to let go of in discussions and negotiations at the time to make sure that it passed, because we had been at it for almost 10 years.
I think I'll move away from the legal discussion here because I'm not a lawyer, so I have no clue. But I will talk about the danger that such laws have on public health, as our professor said. As I said, you cannot have a law, you can't say you're fighting HIV/AIDS, and then you have a law that drives people on the ground. It leads to all sorts of things. You have men who sleep with men, married women, and then that's how the disease spreads, and all sorts of things can really, really, really go wrong. And then I'm also going to segue into why people are afraid of gay people.
Yeah.
Maybe about a month ago or 2 months ago, in the US, there was a study published by the Huffington Post, I think. And the study revealed that all men who are extremely homophobic actually have same-sex attractions themselves. And the homophobia is an expression of the battle they're having inside. And so that's an interesting angle. This is research now, this is not me speaking. So I think that's part of the study.
How about before you move on, I wanted to just ask you, because based on your own experience working with being an LGBTQI advocate, what are your findings on violence against sexual minorities in Nigeria, and what are your perhaps stories and experiences that you've been in contact with? I wanted us to just know a bit more about the kinds of things that are happening. I know that Olivia has spoken a bit about it, but I want to know from your perspective as well.
Personally, I haven't experienced anything,
But people that you're in contact with,
people that I hear lots of stories every day. It's exactly what Olivia was talking about. The police just go around rounding people up, and I think it's just to get money. I don't think that police round people up to enforce laws or anything like that. I think it's just extortion. And as you said, police think that it's okay to do that because we don't speak up about it, and our voices are not heard. So I think we need to make an issue of that. We need to really bring it up to let people know that, listen, this is not acceptable. And actually, extortion, I think, is a crime. My lawyer stands correctly.
Iheoma, does somebody want to say something?
Yes, I mean, on the public health issue. So I just finished this work for the Commonwealth Foundation around transgendering men in northern Nigeria, and it's interesting the things that I heard and saw speaking with family men in northern Nigeria, and the kind of partners that they had, and the whole issue around why this law is bad for public health. A certain young man who falls ill very, very, very frequently in the area, says to me that he has sex with, you know, a certain number of the married men in the area. You know, and a lot of it is done in hiding in uncompleted buildings without protection. You know, and one of the reasons is that in places like the hospitals in Abuja, for example, if you go to the hospital with something like, say, anal warts, the doctors will ask you, how did you get this thing? So you pull out, you know, and then you call other doctors, and that's
like
why
victimizing and shaming.
Yes, a lot of them stop going to the hospital.
Yeah.
You know. So, but however, there's one clinic in the FCT where MSMs are treated, you know, exclusively MSMs and female sex workers. So they have that place to go. However, in the early days of that organization, they were raided by the DSS, by the Abuja Environmental Protection Board. They came there, raided the place, and so that's the only clinic in Abuja, and I don't know if there's something similar in Lagos that treats MSM, because if you go to a regular hospital, they will treat you like a spectacle. A lot of doctors actually have never treated anal warts, for example. So for them it's a news, it's like, ooh, Jesus, where did you get this, you know? And then they start to probe. You know, it's you people, you know, and that kind of thing. So the public health implications are huge, you know, and the problem is it affects all of us. And when people exclude, they forget that actually when you exclude based on law, you cannot exclude based on human interaction. And you know, we have sex with each other. Okay, we fuck each other. You know, generally, you know, we do it. You know, and you don't know who that person's been with. You don't know who this person's been with. You know, and when one person in the chain, you know, brings in something, then all of us are affected.
I just wanted to agree with Pamela on something when she said, you talked about the fact that gay people are not seen as human beings, and I just wanted to read where it says, whoever has carnal intercourse against the order of nature with any man, woman, or animal shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which extends to 14 years and shall also be liable to a fine. So I just want to say the idea that sexual minority is not seen as a human being. We have very little time because we have to go to the audience as well, but before we do that, how do we sort of extrapolate the rights of sexual minorities and get people to understand, you know, understand their fundamental human rights within our cultural framework? Because we can't divorce, I know Professor talked about that, and this culture and religion has always been used as an excuse for exclusion and discrimination and hate and normalizing hate. But how do we communicate that? Because we talked about the language being used. I know Sogunro said, you know, it's like we still see gay rights as an imported idea of rights. It's not really a human rights. It's, you know, you are just bringing your own extra. So how do we extrapolate that? And because fundamentally, these laws are here. These laws are here. We're legislating morality, legislating behavior, legislating whatever it is. But the only way that certain things can change, especially issues around violence, is how we start to see it as human beings or as citizens. So how do we extrapolate their rights of sexual minorities within our cultural framework?
Okay, I sell adult toys, and once a quarter, I think Elnathan has participated. I try to push the discussion on sex. And I can never forget the discussion we had on anal sex, and Bisi was the lead that day. Bisi Alimi. He was the lead that day, and it was just surreal because somebody got in touch with me afterwards and said, why are you always encouraging people to engage in homosexual sex? Why? Why do you think you can't, you know, use this in Nigeria everybody has a mission. Use this your mission, your talent, your method, your gift, your calling. Why? Your calling. Why? You know, you need to be serious with this thing. Don't be encouraging these people to come and spoil your hustle. remember, no, seriously, and I remember thinking to myself, now, she must be on something. But the funny thing was, she was seriously upset. So I picked up the phone to have a discussion with her. And I told her that, I tried to explain to her that my biggest sellers on my website were heterosexual couples engaging in anal sex. I know you're all looking, thinking, eh? There are women who sleep with men, but whose men want to have anal sex with them. So they will buy the douche, they will buy the anal cream, they will buy the anal vibe, the anal plug, the bits and pieces that go with it. Women, when they go to print, they print everywhere. Where should they go to have the hair removed in that place, blah, blah, blah. And she was quiet on the phone. Now for me, we have a problem. Our understanding and perception of what people do in their bedrooms behind closed doors. Our insistence on moralizing on what they do and trying to regulate what they do. And if that fails, we then begin to blame. So when we had this discussion and it wasn't going the way she liked, she then told me, you know that that law is for people like you, you're not supposed to promote. That was what she told me, yes. I then said to her, fine, my husband is a lawyer, it's okay. What do you want me to tell her? I said my husband is a lawyer. But I was shocked that she could stoop that low. Yes? To somebody she knew. And because I was having a discussion on a topic she felt uncomfortable with and was unwilling to even think out of the box, that actually heterosexual people were my customers as an adult online retailer. They were the ones buying my anal plugs. Do you understand? I mean, that's the reality for me. So, culturally, I think we cannot use the cultural argument when it comes to intimacy in the private sphere. Because what adults do in the privacy of their homes, there's this thing here in Lagos that they call it fizzy. When I see you, hello, hi, we go to parties, we rock, blah, 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 end of story. Behind closed doors, I have people who come to me and say, don't tell them that I came home. I saw on your website, that one that's like this. Like this. Has veil. What do you mean it has veil? It has veil. I'm sitting there thinking, okay. So it tells you. And then you have men that get in touch with us that say, I have diabetes. I want strap up for my wife because it's not working. So what are we saying about things like that? Do you understand where I'm going? Yeah. If they're saying culture, culture is relative. It moves, it evolves. It's fluid. After all, in the community that I come from, they used to kill twins. Yet they don't kill twins anymore. And so we really need to be careful how we use the cultural argument, because it really kind of doesn't wash. I mean, I would like to think in a few years from now we won't be having this kind of discussion. That we would have evolved to where we're not having this discussion, we're having another kind of debate. I'm hoping that this is the first of many. I know that in the social media world, many of us have these discussions, but that is in the social media world for this group of people. We still have another set, older generation, who don't know what Facebook is and who have no clue. Within the younger ones, they're now using Snapchat and the like, and that's where the discussion is also taking place as well, for many, many young ones as well.
To contribute to this particular discussion, I would say, for me, the fundamental problem in Nigeria today is classism. Not women's rights, not child rights, it's classism first and foremost. And that is the fact that, or what they call hierarchy. The idea that, look, it's your class that determines the types of rights that are attached to you. Look, there are gay ministers in Nigeria that everybody knows are gay, and that's the end of you, so you know so. Meanwhile, the same way the minister is working, now this man in Kekemawa is working, the policeman say, come, you are gay.
Yeah.
Has anybody arrested the minister? And the same thing flows in a lot of this. It is power structures that really define how rights flow in Nigeria. So if we were to actually be a, in quotes, homophobic country, that minister will never get there, that governor will never get there, that's whatever will never get there. We are homophobic only to the extent that the person we are homophobic against discriminates our class structure.
Yes.
There are people who go and do all night long gay orgies, lesbian orgies in Sheraton or wherever, and everybody knows and nobody looks. And then you come and do the same emotion and they call police, and the police carries all the boys or all the girls, as the case may be. So to me, I think the essential struggle is about finding that level equality first for everybody, whether you are president or you are doctor or you are a gatesman. When we can find that level equality, we can now begin to build on all rights. Which other rights we need to fight for within that equal space? I don't know how much historical accuracy is the movie Selma. I don't know how many of you have seen it. But one of the things that struck me there was the fact that Martin Luther King kept popping into the White House to discuss with the president over the Civil Rights Act. And I keep thinking, this makes no freaking sense. You don't just pop into the White House to discuss with the president about the civil rights of your people. I mean, it's like you have rights already, right? But what occurred to me there was that the right he had there to pop and see the president was the equality of all people are equal first, all persons are equal first. Now, within that space of all persons are equal, we now begin to fight for, well, women are not being equal as much as men. Children are not given rights as much as every other person. Black people are not being given rights. I mean, we want to match up to an equality. But in Nigeria, we don't even have that baseline of all people are equal. For us to now say, oh, these people are less equal than the others. So when the gatesman who is straight is being treated with trash, by the governor who is gay, then what rights are you fighting for in that power setting? But again, because a lot of us here are privileged, we look more in terms of, oh, the rights you are fighting for the people below our own class status. We are not actually fighting for the rights of people above our class status. So to me, if you can get that setting where the president is as equal as the statesman, where everybody is equal, then you can now begin to pick the inequalities within the system and actually address them better.
Thank you.
I'll just add a little dimension to this, still based on the work I did in Kano. So a few people were arrested, right? And because of the work I'd done with them, they called and said, oh, we have these boys in Abuja who were arrested in a hotel. You know, this is what happened. And I said, okay, do you want me to call some of these LGBT rights groups that could help? And he said, no, don't call anybody. I know who to call. And he called a member of the House of Representatives who placed the call, and within 3 hours they were all released. And apparently there are 2 or 3 of them like that in the federal house that, you know, help, but only a specific group of people. So these transgender men I'm talking about. Now, I just wanted to add this new dimension that in northern Nigeria, apart from MSMs, right? So transgender men who often offer sexual services to MSMs who have wives and children have, to the general society there's homophobia, but they seem to have a sort of privilege because of the people that they offer services to. And that was the basis of my work. And you know, I call them keepers of secrets. And it's why they are separate from the general group of MSMs that have discrimination of blah blah blah. They actually have a position of privilege, of power. And that's why I agree with Ayo that we have to look at class. We have to. It's just like the feminism movement was not complete without dealing with capitalism and its effect on the women's movement. The same thing, we have to think of class. We have to think of empowerment and economics, because a lot of them, as soon as they came from Kano or Bauchi to Abuja and started sleeping with these members of House of Representatives, they were vulnerable. As soon as they started sleeping with these guys, they were not, because they knew that as soon as their secrets were out, that their secrets would be out together with the secrets of a lot of powerful people, and these people will not allow that to happen. And it connects with the larger point of finding a way to connect this entire struggle with the struggle of Nigeria, so that people know that actually my destiny and yours are intertwined, and that if I fall, you are at risk of falling, so that it affects everything. And the same police that arrests an effeminate-looking person in Mushin is the same police that will shoot you at a checkpoint if you don't give them money. It's the same police that will harass you in the police. It's the same police that will say, "Oh, your husband beat you." So it's a domestic matter. And so unless we try to mainstream, I think. Now there's a problem with mainstreaming, I know. There are arguments against mainstreaming and how in fact it can hurt the LGBT community. That I think is a conversation to be had and to be discussed. I just wanted to bring in this northern Nigeria.
Yeah, because we're going, unfortunately I don't have time to talk about the corrective rape that's happening in certain countries. But we okay, 2 minutes to discuss. Okay, so Pamela, would you like to say something?
I think I noticed that in Nigeria, most of the discussion around LGBT rights is centered on, I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, my religion doesn't allow it, and all sorts of things.
So natural.
But, yes, but I think we need to move away from that, because you can never really agree on my religious beliefs and your religious beliefs and what I like and what I don't like.
Do you think that even trivializes the rights for sexual minorities when we make it about whether you agree or you don't agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we need to move towards talking about our rights in the Constitution. This needs to become a legal matter, not even a sexual matter in terms of who you're sleeping with or who you're not sleeping with. So I think that's the direction that we need to be going towards, and I think that's where we're going to make progress. If we keep, meddling underneath this religion thing, I don't think we're going to get anywhere.
Thank you. Ogas gave me 2 minutes to talk about this, and I talked about corrective rape. That's been a very big issue in South Africa because of the protection of rights and people being able to come out. So I don't know, Iheoma, would you like to say anything on that? And Elnathan, because you talked about mainstreaming and the effects of that as well. So would you like to go ahead first?
I'm not figuring it out. Okay. Corrective rape. We've had a few in the Nigerian Feminist Office Secretariat. We've had a few young women that have come to us having experienced recent corrective rape taking place in Nigeria. It's not something that is common. It happens. The discourse is that it takes place a lot more in Southern Africa than it does in West Africa. However, we have had a few incidences in Nigeria. Now, is there going to be an increase? I don't know. What can we do about it? I think right now the recommendation has been to send them to the Mirabel Center for sexual trauma. That's the first thing. But because we have such a law that makes many of the women don't even want to come forward, they don't even want to go for the free counseling that's being offered by the Mirabel Center. And that's a frightening angle to it, because now they're being raped, they're being excluded, some are suffering from mental health challenges because of the trauma of the sexual assault, and they're not getting the medical care that they need. So they're being failed at all levels. And it's something that discourse has to acknowledge and find a way around it. We need to be able to discuss it. With the women, they're not being arrested as the men by the police.